Welcome to Fertility Village. This is your weekly live talk show where community and group support come together. With rotating hosts, expert guests, and meaningful conversations, we're here to guide you through the highs and the lows of infertility. Whether you're searching for answers, seeking advice, or just looking for a special place to belong, Fertility Village is your space to connect, learn, and grow. Because it really does take a village, and we are here for you every step of the way. Thanks for joining.
Oh, Erin may be muted there. We are so excited. So welcome back to Fertility Village. We're so thrilled to have both of you. So both Alex and Victoria are incredible fertility advocates who have personally I followed from the beginning. So Victoria is at Expecting Anything, and Alex is pursuing fatherhood, I believe, on Instagram. So Victoria not only shares her personal journey of using 2 egg donors to start her family, but she is also has a organization of her own that she does run, Fertility Unfiltered, and I do have her book, Our Hearts Match. So she has a beautiful children's story about donor conception and how helping families talk openly and positively about children in their beginnings. And Alex is a incredible advocate who utilized sperm donation to start his family, and he shares a very underrepresented male perspective in the fertility world. So thank you both for joining.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
So Victoria, we would love if you could share with us a little bit about your path and how you got to using egg donors, and then how you utilize both of your egg donors.
Yes. I'll try to give you the cliff notes because it's a long one. I, at a very early stage in my marriage, thought I would just get pregnant the easy way, and had a timeline of like even the signs that my children would have, and all the fake dreams that a lot of us have as we enter into marriage. But I always felt like something was off. I don't know why. I knew I had painful periods, and I knew that they were long periods. I'd never had a pregnancy scare. So part of me thought something was wrong with me, but I was still, I guess, in denial that like this was all going to work out for me. So we tried the old fashioned way for several years, and then ended up in a fertility clinic, 3 years in. And I remember getting my levels checked, and I was 31 at the time, 32. And they said that my levels were that of like a 48-year-old. But they said, don't worry, you're young. It'll be okay. Like, just hang in there. Like, you're young. Long story short, I didn't realize my eggs were not young. I had stage 3 endometriosis, which I later also found out had several surgeries to remove that. I kept trying with my own eggs because I was young. And during that phase of trying, I got older, and, I kept hoping and wishing and trying and forcing my body and doing IUIs and IVFs and egg retrievals, and never getting more than 2 eggs, which is, most people would never try to even fertilize 2 eggs, but we did because that's the best we ever got. Never got to fertilization. Finally got sat down with our doctor in like the serious room with like your clothes on, and she's like, we need to talk about egg donation. And at the time I had done a little research because I was always a planner and a control freak, and thought, what's the next thing? Like I'm going to be a mom. Like I can't let this stop me. And in the middle of all this too, there was an adoption that almost happened that failed, and lots of other things that were just like, what is going on? And so she presented the idea. I wasn't on board necessarily, but I was open to it because, again, my goal was to be a mom. And I was like, if this can help me, if this is going to better my chance, I'm open to learning about it. I never talked to my husband about it, which I probably should have, because he was like, no, absolutely not. We're not going to do that. And I was like, what? We're not? Let's talk about it. And he's like, no, I married you. Like, I want to have a baby with you. And she was like, well, hold on a second. You're still having a baby together. And she really educated us a lot on things like epigenetics, and the influence that I still would have. over my child, and still do have as a parent. And to be honest, I think it was that topic, epigenetics, at the time that helped me get over the hump and helped my husband at the time. So I'm really big on education and like learning sort of the things that can come of family outside of genetics. Epigenetics is just one, thing. And so we said yes after lots of grieving and a lot of just really sad, angry thoughts. And I found an egg donor who looked very similar to me, talked like me, according to my doctor. I never actually met her. Same heritage, same like school sports, talents, like all the things. Sadly, her eggs were like mine too. And so the day before her retrieval, my doctor called and said, we gotta call it. Her eggs just disappeared. I don't know what's going on. But now we have to have a conversation with her about her fertility. And my heart hurt for her because I felt connected to her. I was like, oh, this poor girl. She's like 26, I think, at the time. And that was probably the darkest I had ever seen because I thought I was cursed. I thought I finally had my Hail Mary, and we invested so much. I mean, 401ks, credit cards. We took a HELOC out on our house. Like we literally, like, we're just like, we're going to do this and it's going to work. And so when it didn't work, it really, really messed up my mental state. And so we had to take off time from everything. I just said, we're done. We're not going to talk about this for a whole year. We traveled. I had a really spiritual experience with a monk in the rain in Thailand that made us come back and say, okay, we're ready to try again. And so we got a new egg donor who was not my twin, who did have blonde hair and blue eyes, but that's probably the only thing that we really had in common physically. She did have a similar heritage, which I thought was interesting. We both liked the same movie, Step Brothers, by the way. And so I was like, okay, we're going to give it a chance. She was healthy. She was fertile. She had 2 children of her own. And so we made that choice. And our first embryo transfer, I got pregnant with my daughter, who's now about to be 7, Florence, who is my best friend in the whole world. And I'm going to try not to cry because I just love her so much.
If you cry, I will cry.
She's like,
well, I'll be a puddle.
She's the reason I always tell people I'm glad my eggs didn't work. It's because of her. Well, my son too, but it's just my soul's match in every way. She doesn't look like me, which at the time, back in the day, I would have thought would have been really hard for me. But like, I don't ever think about that. And if I do, it's like in an endearing way, like, you're so beautiful, you're so cool, And then we had 2 other embryos from that egg donor that we thought, well, this means 2 more babies, right? And my daughter was 3 years old, eventually 4 years old, and she kept asking, when's the baby coming? Are you getting me a baby? What's the deal? And those transfers didn't work, unfortunately. And I had to tell her, I said, I'm out of eggs. Like, I'm sorry, honey. Like, I tried so hard. And it was really deep grief for me because I was losing for her, not just for me. At least at the time, that's how I felt. And I'll never forget, she looked at me and she said, well, just get new eggs. And I said, well, I can't just go to Trader Joe's. Like, it's not that easy, And she goes, well, you can do hard things. And I said, God, she's good. Because these are things like I say to her. And I was like, I can do hard things. You're right. And at the time I was 41, I think, when we were having this conversation in the hallway. And I went down to my husband. I was like, we got to get new eggs. He was like, are you insane? And so we decided frozen egg donor because it was quicker, because we were, I was, like I said, 41 at the time, and also more affordable. And we just wanted 1 baby. We didn't, need like 30 eggs. We only needed, well, we didn't know how many we needed, but we knew we wanted 1 baby, and that the odds felt good to us. So we did that. And that was a hard transition because I was just like, our story's already complicated enough. Now we're going to bring in another person, into our family story. But we did, and we got 6 eggs and 2 embryos, and we did a practice round with one that was inconclusive because I had so many issues with mock cycles and whatnot. And that little inclusive guy is my son, Vaughn. who's now 2 years old and is the smartest, most curious, funniest little guy. He completes our family perfectly. And even though him and his sister are technically half genetically related, we don't use that word. Like, they don't have half of each other. They are siblings. They fight like siblings. They back each other up like siblings. They are brother and sister. And so that's our family. I think that's, the story could continue. There's so much more to talk about in terms of like parenting and navigating the world of donor conception as a parent.
Yeah.
But again, no regrets, of course, and very proud of our story. We talk about it very openly, and our kids know everything. They always have, and they always will.
I think your account was the first one I came across when we started looking. I think you had written about, it was like a blog post. I think that's where you first started. You were writing blog posts and Facebook posts and stuff, and that's where I had originally found you, and then have followed along ever since. But yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. I started blogging. I didn't do that for like all these altruistic reasons. Like, I truly was like hurting so badly that I just wanted to tell the world all at once, so they'd stop asking me like, why aren't you pregnant? Do you not want kids? Like, and I don't know. I didn't want to have to face people and tell them. I was too scared because I was just a mess. I was depressed. I was angry. So I was like, if I just write a blog and post it on Facebook and Instagram, like, then I don't have to tell anyone. Then like, if they reach out, then I'll deal with it. But like, at least then everyone knows, and I can just walk into baby showers and not have to hide it anymore.
For sure.
That's just such a relatable part of the journey, I think, for everybody who's gone through it. And I don't know how much like our viewers know, or our people who are listening after this fact, but Ashley and I as hosts tonight, we both have this in common, that we both also started our families with myself a sperm donor and Ashley with an egg donor. So we really, so much of what you said, Victoria, is just, I want to just go back and unpack a few of those things as we go through the episode, because just like how genetics don't matter, it's become so real to me in my own journey with my son who's turning 4 this month. And I know Ashley and I have had so many of these conversations. But even just you talking about how you went back and did it, 4 or 5 years after, like, I've had all of these thoughts. Like, I always wanted a bigger family, but I've just like put a hard stake in the ground that like, I'm done. I emotionally and mentally, I don't think I have anything left to give to the journey, even though I wanted more children. And so, but like one of the big reasons we kind of walked away was because our donor left the program, there was no sperm left. And so we were like, you know what, that's a really good indication that, it can be done. I was like, I really didn't want to have like the 2 different donors, but hearing you like talk about it, and I know now, like having my son, it would be no big deal, And so anyways,
you have to think about too, like your family dynamic as it exists right now. Like, I have zero genetic connection to either of my children.
Yeah.
Right. But I was so focused on like, but like I can make them 100%. Like, for what? You know what I mean? Like, we already understood the definition of family in such a unique, beautiful, different way that 100%. Like that was a worry that I think was made up in my head.
Yeah. And in our own family, like my immediate family, one of my sisters adopted. And so we already had this like connection to like genetics isn't what makes a family at all. And well, I want to come back to like you touched on like how your daughter doesn't look like you. And I want to come back and like, do some open dialogue on that whole thing later. But let's move over to Alex. Alex, we'd love to hear your story, a little bit about your family building journey and how sperm donation became part of your family.
Yeah, maybe pretty similar, in the beginning to Victoria, and, maybe most people that have a vested interest in, a story like these that ends in, infertility and donor conception. So my wife and I have been together since high school. Actually, I moved after my second year of high school, and first day of school, first class I had with Lauren. And the story goes that she called dibs to her friends, and
so cute.
It eventually all worked out. We were together a really long time, and got married pretty early, like right after college. And I think we both just thought like were both young, healthy. You know, we were kind of the first people in our friends group to get married. And so we were like, well, it already felt kind of isolating to be the only married people in our entire circle. So we were like, well, having kids is 100% gonna, you know, isolate us away from all. Nobody's gonna want to hang out with us anymore. So let's wait a little bit. And so that's what we did. We kind of just put it off for a few years, and about 5 years in, we were like, you know, okay, it's time. And some of our friends started, you know, having babies and things. So we just kind of decided that it was our time too, and got some traveling out of the way. And about a year went by and nothing was happening. And it was, you know, that whole year was really hard on Lauren. And I think I kept kind of just feeling like Victoria said, I always felt like something was wrong. I didn't. Like, I never once felt like something's off, something's wrong. Even when Lauren was really struggling with the process and it not working right away, I was always just like, you know, you're being impatient, calm down. This is normal. This is all, and that's what they tell you too. Like, anything less than a year, like, that's completely normal, you know, whatever. And so I just kind of kept leaning into that and saying, you know, it'll happen when it happens and when it's time. And I was wrong. And so we eventually, she went to her doctor and said, this is really hard and I'm ready to kind of start looking at what the problem might be. And so, her doctor is actually a good friend of ours and was very helpful. Did some kind of, you know, baseline tests on Lauren, couldn't find anything that could be causing any issues. And then she came to me and said, the easiest thing for you guys to do and to rule this out is for you to get tested. That kind of caught me off guard, I think, a little bit too, because I never once had this feeling that like something's off. And, you know, funny's not the right word, but it is, you know, very interesting now to look back. And I think I 100% fell into the category of people who believed that like infertility happens to women. And that's it. We both were like, this is a Lauren problem. I mean, we both just kind of felt that when we realized like, okay, it has been a year, maybe something is a little bit off. Like, neither of us really expected that it would be me. And I don't know why. I think it's just that kind of that, you know, misconception, that it only applies to women. And so, when we got that call, a couple weeks later, and it was our friend, Lauren's doctor. I came out, I was in a meeting and Lauren came and picked me up, and I got in the car and she was sobbing. And I was like, I don't know. It was in that moment and never before that I knew instantly that it was me. And I said, what's wrong with me? And, you know, that was hard. That was, you know, just a moment that I'll never, ever forget. And her saying, you know, the doctor saying there was no sperm found. I mean, honestly sat there silently for a little bit, kind of, you know, with my jaw on the floor. I didn't even know that was possible. To be honest with you, shows how little I had really, you know, looked into it and experienced this with friends or family or anything. And so we were so blindsided by that. And I remember in that same phone call, I said, am I ever going to get to be a dad? And, you know, she thankfully, you know, I look back and there were so many things along the way that were really, really hard, but I'm grateful for the way that it all kind of fell into place. And who was able to deliver that news to us and be there for us and answer those first really hard questions that there's no answer to. You know, she didn't know. She can't answer that for me. And so just so grateful for how it kind of worked out. And we immediately, she got us into a urologist who specialized in male factor infertility. I retested with the same results. And then they said, well, there's the surgery we can do, have what's called varicocele, which is just like, you know, you think like varicose veins. And so it can kind of cause like increased blood flow, so increased temperature, which is not super suitable for sperm production or life thereafter. And so sometimes can be a factor and can cause infertility. And so he said, this is, kind of the first step that I would take and the easiest way to go about it, which kind of scary to hear that the easiest and, safest first step is a surgery. Not really what I wanted to hear, but that's what we did. And then we had to wait 6 months to find out, to kind of let, like, if there was going to be sperm regeneration, it would take that long for those cells and everything to regenerate and for my body to start processing the way that it should. So we just had to keep waiting after what already felt like forever in that first year. So another 6 months was pretty brutal. And, during that time we talked a lot during that time because Lauren's a dreamer. She always says that I'm the pin to her balloon, which I find a little bit offensive. You say like I'm the string to the balloon or something. She's like, no, you just pop it. You don't hold me down. You don't. But I'm a realist, and once we got that initial news and once we kind of knew what the problem was, then I was all in on like researching, reading. I couldn't find anybody that was going through this. Couldn't find, there was no podcast, there was no, anything like that for me to look for. So it was just random, Reddit pages and Google searches and, blogs from the UK and just whatever I could find, honestly. And I started researching what are all of our options. And so we knew from the beginning that, sperm donation might be a route that we would have to consider. We talked about adoption, we talked about embryo adoption, we talked about a few different things. And Erin mentioned earlier that she has a sister that's adopted, and I have a niece and nephew that are adopted. And actually they were adopted right in the middle of all of this happening for us. And so I think I look back on that again with such gratitude for the timing of all of it, because love them to death. So grateful that they're in, our family, and that's my niece and nephew. But it also really showed us, like, they came into our family when they were 3 and 4. And it really kind of reignited the knowledge and the belief that Lauren and I always had, that we wanted to experience pregnancy and childbirth and those first days. And just, I'm a control freak, to be honest. And I, to be able to like just control everything along the way. I think a lot of times I hear, from women that say like, I just really want to experience pregnancy. Like, am I selfish for that? And I'm always like, no, because honestly, I wanted to experience it too. Like, I went with her. And so in the end, that's the decision that we made, was to use donor sperm. Not a decision we made lightly. I'm also an overthinker, and I did just that for a long time. Took us a couple of years, lots of counseling and lots of conversations with each other, with friends and family and our therapists and doctors and everything else. And so we finally just took that leap. And in 2019, we landed on a donor finally. And we decided to start with IUIs to try that way first. And we were super fortunate that we found success with our second IUI, and that resulted in our now 5-year-old daughter, Delaney, who is, I need to catch myself kind of, Victoria, I'll get weepy talking about my baby too. So she's just the most incredible kid. And yeah, I have a similar, posture now too, where I think, my God, I'm glad that none of that worked like we thought it was going to, because I just truly can't imagine my life with any other kid. And so, that's kind of how we got to where we are today.
I'd love for you to talk about Alex, because I remember following you and you're talking about your spreadsheets when you were trying to choose a donor. And I'd love
to. Have we not talked about this, Alex?
Oh gosh.
You mentioned that I'm a control freak.
Yes, I remember you.
Seriously.
I remember you saying that. So I would love to hear from both of your experiences, how you went about choosing your donors.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah. So I did make a very large spreadsheet. So I, again, kind of a control freak, kind of needed to feel, I think in an experience over the course of years where we had no control, I needed to feel like there was something that I could do, something that I could control to, like, okay, well, whatever decision I do have some control over, we're going to make the best decision that we can. And so to do that, we're going to need all the information available. And so that's just that was kind of my grieving process, and my just the way that I could kind of dig myself out of that hole, was to feel like I'm doing everything I can. So yeah, the way that that it worked for us, at least. So I'm in the U.S. and we switched clinics I say switched clinics. We went to a new clinic for an RE because we had not previously been seeing one. And so went to a reproductive endocrinologist, and they kind of gave us a list of banks that we could use. And there were 5 banks on them. And you kind of pay to see who all of the donors are, to see all their information, the full catalog. And I just was like, we did one, and I was like, yeah, that person's not in here. So we did another one, and I couldn't stop. I was like, now I have to know every single option that there is out there. And I think at first it was like, I'm trying to kind of find my clone, to be honest with you. I think we both, I in a weird way, like, excited is not the right word, because I wasn't excited, but I think there was a part of me that thought, at some point I'm gonna click a button that's gonna pull up just like me. And again, I go back to, like, Lauren and I had been together so long, that since we were, not that we were necessarily talking about like having babies together when we were 16, when we first started dating, but like we both had from a pretty early age, we knew that this was going to be the rest of our lives, was going to be together. And like this, we both had always envisioned this going a very specific way. And having, like Victoria said, like, I married you, and we both just had this exact idea of what we wanted and what we were going to find. And so then anything less than that felt like such a letdown. And so then it's such a what a huge decision to like go create this human, if you're in this state of like disappointment. And so I just was like, let's get everything out onto one place at once. And so I had like, which bank are they in? What's their donor name or number? What's their height, eye color, hair color, ethnicity, like any family medical history notes worth taking? What are their interests? How, literally everything. I had things down to, I still have it. I had things.
I still have mine.
In fact, we have some of our very best friends in the world are pregnant via egg donation. And I sent her my spreadsheet somewhere along the way when they were trying to decide on a donor, because I've kind of always held that, close for us. But I felt like, man, she was like, how did you decide? And I was like, that's impossible to answer, but here's kind of what our process was. And so we just used that to kind of go, like, almost rank people, to be honest, and just kind of go, man, I really liked that about this person, but I really don't like their family medical history, or, whatever, or I'm 5'9", that person's 6'4", like, we're not doing that, or whatever it is. So we kind of just, like I said, I needed to feel like I had every single piece of information on every donor that was an option for us out on one place at once to see. And just kind of, for me, that was the only way to really have it all out there, and to be able to kind of start whittling down on what's an impossible decision to make.
It does feel impossible, for sure. I remember us feeling quite overwhelmed with the process, because it's so much information and it's such a huge decision. And my partner had a hard time, like, with all of the overstimulation, overwhelming information. And so I ended up making the short list. And I was like, these are the top 5 that, like, I've done the work, I've done the research. And then we kind of, he was part of the final decision, but it was like, he was like, I don't want to be compared to every single man in this bank or in the, it's like, it just felt like for him, it was, harder. So I was like, okay, I'll just do that work. I would love to do that work. Let me make a short list and make this easier for both of us to come to like a conclusion,
Yeah, I know I already talked a lot about it, so I'll be kind of quick, but I think like Lauren had kind of maybe romanticized a little bit. Again, I'm the pin to her balloon. Like she kind of had romanticized, this is going to be us like sitting on the couch holding hands with the laptop and like find this exact right person, and we both just like know it. The heavens are going to open up and we're going to know that this is the exact right decision for us. And I don't work that way, for one. But two, for whatever reason, like I did want to be a part of it. I wanted to look through everybody, but I didn't want to look through it with her. And I think part of it was because I did feel that. I really felt like it was, and this is like the person that is like this is my person in life. And like, even with her, I felt this feeling of like, I cannot do this with you. Like, I feel so insecure right now. So like, replaceable, maybe. It just was like, I did not like any of the feelings that it brought up. And so even though I was a big part of the decision process, it was separate. And so I would go, hey, I made a bunch of notes today, like go through it and see what you think. And we would do it separately. And so, maybe not how she thought it was going to go, but
yeah, I mean, I was much like her, where I thought the same thing. And then, the first time we lived together, and I was like, wait, where are your ears on your head? And like, how far apart are your eyes? Like, you really start like dialing in on like the smallest things. And then it's like, okay, like, because I'm like just all the details and all of the, I'm the overanalyzer in our relationship. And so yeah, it became like that. And it was just like, okay, let's dial it back and like remember what's the most important thing here. And like, then, pick the 5 most important things and let's base the decisions on that. I mean, that's how we did. But I'd love to hear from you, Victoria, too, about, your spreadsheeting.
Yeah, it's very similar to all the same things that Alex was saying. And I also had like success rates and such, that was a big thing because the first one because with my first egg donor, I didn't have a spreadsheet. And that's the one who failed. I found someone, I just obsessed and looked at like 6 different banks. And I finally just found this girl that, like I said, was my doppelganger. And then, so the second time I was like, no, this is my business now. Like, I have to run this business smartly. Like, I can't make any like shitty bets, So I had to like, not just put in the things that were important to me, but I had to look at the success rates. I think more than anything. Right. Whereas the first donor I chose was a first-time donor. So we didn't have that to go off of. And then with my third one, the one that we used for my son, I think I chose her in like 1 hour. No spreadsheet. Because now that my daughter's here, I'm like, okay, like what's important, right? It's healthy, fertile. And I wanted her to be open. I wanted an open relationship. So I found that within a frozen egg bank, which was like rare. I think it's becoming more common now, but that frozen eggs, you could have an open relationship. And so I had a very short list to work with to begin with. And she has green eyes. She doesn't have blue eyes. Like, there's just, to me, it was like, she didn't need to look like me. It wasn't about that anymore, because that grief to me was like processed. So it was a very different Victoria entering this process than it was the other 2 times. And I remember I showed her to my husband. He goes, yeah, that'll work. Like, looks good. Like, it's like, do you want to read? He's like, no, I trust you. It's fine. I'm like, okay. And she did have like the heritage thing was always like something I had to check a box on. Like, my family heritage is like a thing. It's like, I don't know, everybody's so proud of it. So I wanted to be able to say we shared that, so both of my children had, like, both donors had the same similar heritage. But other than that, I mean, she's like, I'm 5'7", she's like 5'11", I think. I mean, like,
I don't know if it matters. Like, my husband has 11 kids in his family. 2 are adopted, and then there's 8 biological kids in his family. He's the oldest, and the children range between 5'3", like fully grown, and 6'4". And it's like, you can't
Right,
just pick from a donor because they might have a sibling that's 5'3", or like genetics
Right.
are the weirdest thing
You
in the
can't
world.
control genetics. So like
No.
we obsess over this shit we can't control. Like
No.
for what?
Exactly. And so, yeah, we do the spreadsheets, we dial in, we try and make all these educated decisions, and then they could still come out with red hair, or my kid
Right.
blue eyes, and we have green and brown, and the donor
Right.
had green, and we're like, he has the most crazy blue eyes in the world. And we're like, but so does all of his cousins on my husband's side. He looks just like his cousins on my husband's side, which how the heck does that even happen
Right.
when he's like, genetically nothing, like not related to them?
Right.
It's wild. It's so crazy. Anyways, Ashley, did you want to add to anything about
I was
how
just
you
going
chose?
to say, I followed Victoria. So her one post, I think it was like, she doesn't have to be my like doppelganger, but she could be my like, long relative or like a distant cousin or, something. And that's how we kind of went. But I remember my husband I just like showed him and I was like, this is like kind of who I wanted. It was our second donor that we actually went with. Our first donor, similar to Victoria, she had done a donor cycle. And when she went back to do her second round, her lab results weren't okay. So she wasn't allowed to continue in the program. So we ended up going with the donor that obviously we have our son now through. But I remember showing my husband the picture. He's like, yep, looks good. Like he didn't really like, it didn't matter to him. Like he was like, he was like okay with the process from the beginning. And I think it was more me and then utilizing Victoria's, all of her research and page.
Aww.
But it's different, I think, like, because Alex, this was your sperm, right? Like, I think I can see why you were the spreadsheet owner, like that makes sense to me. Because I definitely needed my spreadsheet. I needed to have, like, I wasn't going to let him pick,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting. Man, I mean, I want to go so many places with this conversation. And I mean, back to just like the looks. I was talking to somebody the other day, one of the women in our community. She's been on our podcast before, but we call them twibblings. So she has one child by surrogate and then a child who was born 6 weeks before that via her own body. And it was a wild turn of events where she took a pregnancy to full term after like years of infertility, getting a surrogate. And then anyways, so she has these kids 6 weeks apart and they're like genetic siblings full. But the sibling, the kid from the surrogate looks like the surrogate. And so we had this whole conversation last week about mirror, like, I don't know what it's called. I don't know what the scientific terms are for this, but like
probably.
Epigenetics. Yes. Okay. And how wild it is that, like the kids can actually look like us. And I mean, like, I think my son has traits of my partner because it's the mirror, right? It's like what I saw while pregnant with that baby, and that kid looks like that you know what I mean? Like there's this whole idea. I mean, and I would love to hear your takes on this conversation. I think it's still kind of like wild and unstudied, but I would love to know if you've heard anything about this or like, and yeah, like just maybe talk a little bit about, how do we feel about, how your kid looks. I mean, I feel like it doesn't matter, but everybody feels differently about, that whole part of the journey. So yeah, I think for the people who are listening that are maybe considering donor sperms or eggs or like on this journey and at that point to hear from us, how it feels. We're all post journey talking about, when we were in it and that. So yeah, please take some time to share a little bit about that. That'd be great.
Yeah. So I think I'll start with first, like her not looking like me. So my husband is Colombian. And, like I said, we used an egg donor that had blonde hair, blue eyes. She was actually very fair skinned, even more fair than I was. But my daughter looks a lot like my husband in terms of her skin color and her hair color. So out the gate, like from the day she was born in the hospital, people had something to say. I mean, anywhere I went with her, it was like, oh, wow. Where did she get such dark hair? Oh my gosh, wow. So, postpartum and still grieving all this and thinking my kid's going to resent me and all the worst fears. And that's what I'm hit with every time I go in public. That was really hard for me. I mean, there were times where I would cover her up because I couldn't do it. I was like, I can't handle it today. I'm going to lose it in Target, like I just can't handle one more person commenting. Now it's something we celebrate. It's like, we do look different. However, there's so much about us that are the same, right? So like physically we look different, but like our souls are so just deeply intertwined, and our personalities are similar, our sense of humor, our sarcasm, even the tone of our voice, the way that we speak, the way that we tell stories. And a lot of the things that drive my husband insane, little quirks that I have, she has those too, right? So like, you're welcome. But I was so scared of like my child not looking like me. That was like my biggest fear. It was like, oh my gosh, what is that going to feel like? Meanwhile, like had I used my eggs, there's a good chance she wouldn't have either, right? Because of his traits.
For sure.
Again, never had control. Like even then when they were my eggs, I never had control over any of that. With epigenetics, there's things that happen in the womb, obviously, that you can pass on. And then there's a lot of things that happen outside of the womb. So like even like Alex could probably share a lot of like things that he shares with Delaney, but they're real biological differences that happen, biological changes that happen because you share an environment. And I've researched this stuff till I'm blue in the face. I'm working on a blog post now.
Oh, cool.
Epigenetic scientist comes in to speak to my groups, and every time he speaks, I learn something new, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Oh, let's have them on. I want them on live.
Yeah. He's incredible. Yeah. He like studied in IVF labs and just he actually specializes in sperm, but he speaks to egg donation mostly in my groups. But I mean, everything from like your speech patterns to your mannerisms to like your sensitivity to things like allergies, even, or like for example, like my husband always says, I'm like a bloodhound. I can smell anything a mile away, where she has she's the same like smelling abilities. Or just like her facial expression. So like when we smile, like one of my eyes squints, one of her same eye squints as well. And like even my 2-year-old, he's like, I'm kind of OCD about organizing things. He's the same way. Like he like will put things and he'll stand back and look at it like, no, I got to go back and fix it. You know, like he's very similar to me as well. You know what I mean? And he also doesn't look like me, although people have commented more so that he does than she does. I think because he's more fair skinned, but I mean, I don't think he looks like me, but it's a compliment, honestly, when anyone ever says it. But I forget where I was going with this, but like,
no, that's okay.
I think that the one more thing I want to say, I think, you know, we celebrate where she got all her parts from. Right. So like, and that's luck, you guys, that Ashley was holding up earlier, is like, she's similar to me in some ways. She's similar to her dad in some ways, and she's similar to the donor in some ways. And we talk about all of those, you know, her cute little button nose. I always say, you got that from your donor. Like, it's so cute, you know? And, you know, she got her brown hair and her brown eyes from her daddy, you know, but she got her like storytelling ability from her mom, you know? And I used to be scared to talk about the donor, you know, but I recognize now how important it is for her identity to know these things about where she got all the parts. So, and it's honestly like, it's such a beautiful family makeup to be able to like have so much diversity under one roof, to be able to learn from her and see someone that does have different things that we're like, oh, that's so cool. Like you can do things that neither of us can do, you know? So I don't know. It's like something I was so scared of that now I'm like, I think is the coolest part about our family.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. I want to add that, so we have we're not really supposed to do it, but through our clinic where we utilize the egg donor through them, on one of their Facebook pages through them, we've actually I found other people who have used the same donor. And so we have a little like side Facebook group, and there's, I think like 10 or 11 of them now. And it's funny because they'll post pictures and I'll show my mom, and my husband's like, they look nothing alike. And my mom's like, they look nothing alike. And I'm like, oh, I can see like resemblances here and there. But a lot of people are like, yeah, they look nothing like the other kids. And I'm like, because they're not like, you know what I mean? They're not being raised. They are in totally different environments. Like I carried him, like, and people will tell me, Leo looks so much like you. And I'm like, oh, great. And I'm like, I don't see it. And I'm like, I can see him acting like me, or we're both sensitive, and we're both like, we both have, you know, similar similar behaviors and whatnot, but physically I think he looks like my husband. And I do see the donor in him sometimes, but when I'll randomly show my mom, I'll be like, look, he kind of looks like the donor in this picture. And she'll be like, no, I don't see it. I don't think so. And I just think it's so funny that they don't see it. And even my dad, still to this day, he'll always just say, well, you carried him. He has our genetics. And I'm like, that's not how this works, Dad. Like, he still like doesn't fully get him. And my dad's like, he's just like you were. He does the same things you did. And I'm like,
Aw.
it's just so funny, but he still doesn't like fully understand or grasp it. I also know he's like the favorite grandchild of all of them. I don't know that he'll own up to it, but like we all know it. But yeah,
That's amazing.
People see what they want to see, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so true.
it's true.
Yeah, we've connected with, I think, 21 other families that use the same donors, and there's 23 siblings, whatever you want to call them. There's all kinds of words that's floating around in terms of like what's the appropriate name for those other kids. But yeah, we're actually working to connect with some of the other families to keep the conversation open. And so my son will be an only child. So for him to have relationships with those other kids, it actually brings some almost community to the whole journey. But I'd love to hear from you too, Alex, on this. We talked a lot about the looks before with picking the donor. Have you guys connected with any of the other families with that donor?
Yeah, super similar to you. So we, through the bank, we were able to kind of start connecting, but their platform sucks and it wasn't easy to use, and they don't give a whole lot of information, and it's hard to get notifications. And so I did the same thing. I started researching, and through like a side Facebook group, Ashley, like you were saying, I found several more. And then what I did was created a separate, like, private version of that one with just our donors.
Yeah, that's what we did too.
Yeah. And so as of now, I think I know of 8. I have a spreadsheet on that. Don't be shocked. What their names are, where they are, what their parents' names are, everything else. So just because I I'm an analyst, maybe that's Delaney's brain too. Like maybe she wants to know all the information that she can. So I'm trying to do that for her. But yeah, so kind of a similar deal. Like there's, like I said, I think 8 other kids that we know of. There's maybe one that I would say resembles Delaney. And when Delaney was a baby, I really could see it quite a bit more. Now I look at them and I like you said, Ashley, like I can see small little similarities here and there, but really not a ton. And it's kind of funny because I think Lauren and I both had a little bit of relief when we found out that we were having a girl, because I thought that some of the comparison conversations and comments might be deflected a little bit due to like people just like somebody said, one of you guys said just a second ago, people see what they want to see. And I think a lot of times, like if you have a boy, they're going to say something about it looking like their dad. If you have a girl, they're going to say something about it looking like their mom. And that's just kind of the way it goes. And so we really thought, I was like, well, honestly, like having a girl, maybe this is, best case scenario for this situation. They won't say anything about her looking like me. Could not be further from the truth. Like I have, obviously dark hair, dark eyes. My wife has blonde hair and green eyes, and Delaney has brown hair and brown eyes. And she was born right before COVID started, and she was, so a baby. And we actually became like best friends with our neighbors across the street because we were forced to speak to them. Like the first few weeks that we were hanging out, he was calling Delaney Alex Jr. And this was like, just, she looks so much like you, I can't believe how much she looks like you, blah, blah, blah. And one night we were just like, actually, it's kind of funny that you keep saying that, because she and I are not like biologically related at all. And so we've had that experience a lot. She and Delaney, like, so again, like Victoria's book, like we love to celebrate, the differences, things like that too. So she has, I mentioned earlier, like she has adopted cousins that are Black. She has, my other sister has, her husband is Black, and so her kids are half. Then my wife's brother married a woman who's like Native American and like Pacific Islander. And so like our family gets together and it's like, it looks like the United Nations getting together. Mm-hmm. Like everybody has a different, hair texture and skin color and everything. And so it's really like, we love to celebrate that there's everything from like the pasty, blonde-haired, blue-eyed people in Lauren's family to like, you know, everything on the spectrum, you know, the other direction too. And so we love to celebrate those things, but it's kind of interesting because Delaney is very into celebrating what she and I have in common in particular. She loves to, like, if she wins a prize at school and candy is an option, every time, like, she's going to pick a sour candy because she knows I like sour candy. And she's going to come home and go like, Daddy, look, we like sour candy, don't we?
Oh my God. This is the exact same everything. Oh my God.
It's just it's so funny. Like, and it always makes me, you know, the truth is, like, I'll never know what's actually an expressed, you know, genetic similarity, or what's just like what she's choosing, or how just she is naturally, you know, as her. I'll never know like what percentage makes up what in that equation there. But the truth is, I'm not really sure. Like, I care at this point. There's a ton of things that we have in common. And it's so funny. Like, Victoria talked about how on, you know, what was her third go around trying to find a donor, how much quicker she made a decision. And I don't think I could have ever done it in an hour just because I'm an overthinker, overanalyzer, but I can certainly understand how, like, now that I have this relationship that I do with Delaney, I can 100% imagine that, oh yeah, doing this again, like with the knowledge that I have now of how well connected we will be and how similar we will be in so many different ways, like, would take such a weight off of what was such a hard decision early on. So
yeah, it definitely changes things. I'd love to know how y'all handle, and you mentioned it a little bit before, Victoria, like when people, maybe like it's definitely hard at the beginning. I found it really hard too. People constantly commenting and feeling like an intruder in your own life, feeling like you're not able to, you know, I mean, I just kind of became a jerk after a while and been like, when people would say, where did you get the, you know, I mean, I have curly hair, my son has curly hair, but people would know it's super blonde. So they'd be like, where did he get the blonde hair? And I'd be like, actually from a sperm donor. Like, I just got super kind of like, yeah, actually we had a, you know, third party, and just kind of, because I kind of got sick of pretending like, oh, you know, like it's, you know, not real. But I would love to hear how you guys like handle that for folks who are listening that have gone through this or that are struggling with that. You know, how can we support? And we're getting close to the end. I'm realizing this conversation's flying by. So I want to hear about that. And then we have one more question and we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the person. It depends on how much time I have. It depends on my mood, right?
Totally. Like, same.
Sometimes I'm on my soapbox. Sometimes I'm just like, yeah, she looks like her dad, you know, and I'm like, I'm out of there.
Bye.
But like, I've had conversations with kindergartners about egg donation, which I didn't really get approval from the teacher for, but I was volunteering in her class, and Florence came over and sat on my lap, and this little girl was like, why is she doing that? I was like, what do you mean? I'm her mom. And she's like, no, you're not. I was like, yes, I am. And she said, no, you're Ian's mom. And Ian's a little blonde hair, blue-eyed kid. So no, I'm not Ian's mom. I'm Florence's mom. She said, no, you're not. She started crying. This little girl was so upset. She thought we were like tricking her because Florence like kissed me. She was like, oh my God, you know? And she's like, well, it's not true. Like, it's not true. And then the teacher, because the teacher knows, because I tell all the teachers, I'm like, we're proud of our story. We need this represented. I bring in books. I'm like, I'll come talk, like whatever you need. And she looked at the girl. She said, sometimes things don't look the way that you want them to look, but like, it doesn't mean that it's not true, honey. You know, like that's Florence's mom. And then another little girl, while this girl's crying, goes, so why doesn't Florence look like you? And I said, well, because she came from someone else's egg, but she grew in my body. And she goes, oh, literally, oh, that was it. And then the little girl next to her goes, oh, my mommy did the same thing. And my mind was blown, because I'm like, in a class of 25 kids, how is this possible that the 3 kids over at this table? I literally go, are you sure? Because I was in such shock. She goes, yeah, I'm sure. She's a family member, so I kind of do look like my mom. I was like, wow, she's got the details. Okay.
Yeah.
I look at Florence, I go, how cool. You're just like, I know, you know? And then all the other kids goes, that's so cool. Like a different egg. Like they were just like, they loved it. And the little girl was crying, was like, okay. And then finally she goes, and I said, why did you think I was Ian's mom? She goes, because you have the same eyelashes. I had eyelash extensions at the time. And I finally met Ian's mom. I'm like, I get it. Like same eyelash extensions, same hairstyle, same, like it wasn't because I look different than Florence. I actually look like Ian's mom. Like all of this was just so blown up because I was just so reactive to like, well, obviously we look different, but it wasn't that at all. She just actually knew Ian's mom and thought I was her.
Aww. What a crazy story. I love that.
I think that we're like in such a world now where it's not so uncommon as we used to think it was. And even I was in finishing up my teaching, one of my placements, and one of the teachers there, she goes, I used a sperm donor. And she was like kind of saying it like I wouldn't have known anything about what that was. And I was like, oh, actually I used a sperm or an egg donor. And she goes, huh? And then she was like, we instantly connected and we went from there. And I had one of my best friends at school. We were talking like one of the first days, and she was like, she's like, me and my partner, and she was a lesbian, and she's like, we used a sperm donor. And I was like, oh, like we used an egg donor. And I feel like it was just such an instant connection with people. And I feel like it's just not talked about until now. People, I feel like, are slowly starting to come out of their shell and start sharing their stories and be more open with their kids about it.
Mhm.
And I think it's going to be a lot easier for our children to grow up in a different environment than what we were raised. Because when I was raised, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know about egg donation until I found Victoria's, doctors mentioned it, and then through Victoria's posts, that's how I really learned and came to terms with using an egg donor and how normal it is in today's world.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Our kids, by the time they're our age, I pray that it'll be way more acceptable, normalized.
Yeah. With our kids, we'll just have to make sure they ask their future partners if they were also a donor kid, and so that there's no weird crossovers of genetics, because you just never know.
Yep.
Alex, did you have anything you want to add to that?
I mean, it's kind of interesting. We've had a similar situation. Ashley, my wife's a teacher, and so we tell all the teachers and things because we don't want any sideways reactions if Delaney says something about like, oh, my parents used a donor, and somebody says no, you didn't, or whatever. Like we don't want anything like that. But that has kind of led to other conversations. And similarly, like if somebody says, oh, where did she get this? Like Delaney's kind of olive complected and really was when she was a baby too. And people would always comment on that, or where'd you get this or that. Very similar to Victoria, like depends on my mood, who is it, how much do I care about actually educating this person or having this conversation. But like we took the approach pretty early on. We never like made some big Facebook post or anything to say like we used a sperm donor. So we've never done like the big public blast like that. But we have, I think probably every single time, if it's actually a friend, anytime that's happened since Delaney was born, we just use that opportunity to tell them, and just say, oh, actually, we that we struggled with infertility, and we went through male factor infertility, and we ended up using a sperm donor to have Delaney, and that's usually kind of it. Sometimes there's follow-up questions, sometimes there's not. Sometimes it leads to, oh my gosh, so and so like went through the same thing, or it's the doors that it's opened to like other relationships and being able to share our story with other people has been pretty crazy, and probably is one of the big reasons why I keep kind of sharing, just because I remember being in that spot of like Ashley said, like I didn't even know this was a thing. So it kind of feels like a little bit empowering to be able to kind of change the next like generation of what this looks like for the next group of people that's going to go through it, just being able to share our story and hopefully change it for them, and then also for all of our kids in that generation too.
Yeah, for sure. The world is changing so fast, and the stigma, we're like, as we, the four of us here collectively, the rest of the fertility community that's out there on Instagram and publicly sharing our stories and opening up that dialogue so that folks can learn and people can, interact with those stories and understand, how we got here, because it wasn't, on purpose for any of us. None of us would wish that journey on our worst enemy, I don't think. It's so difficult. We're gonna go a little over time. I hope that's okay. But we do want to ask one last question, which is, if you could give some advice to somebody who's just starting to consider this path, what advice would you share?
You want me to go?
Go for it.
You're on the spotlight, so.
It's so hard. And I think everybody's experience is so unique. I said something a long time ago on my page, and it's kind of something that just like hit me middle of the night, rocking Delaney to sleep when she was a baby, and like was sick and crying in the middle of the night. And I was thinking about like how hard it was to get here and all the things that it took, and like how much grief and how much like crying and counseling and everything else we had to go through to get to this point. And then it kind of like what we alluded to earlier with how much easier the decision was for Victoria the second and third time around. Like, and what I ended up saying on my page was like the hardest decision that we've ever had to make would have been the easiest if we knew what was waiting for us when we got to the other side. Like, I think there's so much that we, again, like it's hard for me to let go of that control. And that's why I did all the ridiculous spreadsheets and things like that in the beginning, because I had to control something. But in the end, like you really can control so little about what is actually going to happen. And I just kind of leaning into like making the best decision that you can and trusting that you and your partner, if you have one, like have done all the right things and made like the best decision that you can for your family at the time. And like I said, in my case, I wouldn't go back and have a, biological child in place of Delaney, even if I could. There's no other kid on the planet I'd rather have. So just kind of, as much as I probably would have hated to hear it 7 years ago, like just kind of leaning into trusting yourself, trusting you and your partner's like ability to make the best decision that you can for your situation.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. I actually did an Instagram reel that was like, imagine if someone showed you a wall of photos of your family, like when you're told, hey, you're going to need egg donation, but look, here's the family that's coming to you. Like, how easy would that decision be, But I think for me, there's so much. I think it's like, you gotta find your safe people, right? You got to start talking about it. Because this is grief, it's trauma, right? And you can't just like keep it down inside your body. You have to let it out. And it's best to do that with safe people. And sometimes your safe people aren't who you think they are. They may be total strangers like me and Alex, or someone you met on Instagram, or like a neighbor that also used egg donation or sperm donation. But I think the first thing is like to process that grief, you're going to have to start talking about it and getting it out. And then the next thing I would say is like education. Like there's so much to learn about this that's actually really exciting. It doesn't have to be scary. If you live in the grief, you're going to continuously be scared, sad, angry, which it's okay. You can live there, but like start dipping your toe in some of this other stuff that feels a little bit more positive. Like epigenetics, for example. I always tell people, buy the kids' books now. Like if you're just thinking about this, because once you start to think like the kid and read those stories, there's even like movies about like the movie, The Wild Robot. Have you guys seen that?
No.
I'm like, yes. It's a requirement. It's a requirement. Everyone should watch that movie. It's a robot who gets this little duck egg and she nurtures it. And I'm going to cry about a freaking robot. Like, it's so powerful. It will wreck you in all the best ways. But I feel like, and I actually have friends who have their biological children that messaged me and were like, I watched that movie and I thought about you. And I was like, oh my God. And she said, I was crying. God, like, wow. Like it's a life-changing movie. Anyway, things like that can just help shift your perspective a little bit. Cause you can get stuck in like, this isn't how it's supposed to be. This isn't how families are made. This isn't my dream. This isn't my vision. Or you can have a little bit of that and then start to like blend in some gratitude and some, perspective shaping that does feel, like I said, more positive and hopeful. But I think that just comes from like joining support groups, following people like Alex, like, reading books. There's lots of books out there now. There's so many podcasts, like just start diving in. And I think what exists today is a lot different than what Alex and I had when we were going through this. I'll never forget, Alex, when you first messaged me on Instagram, he's like, hey, I love what you're doing, but I wish there was someone doing it for sperm donation. And I said, yeah, you should do it.
You're the guy.
I almost brought that up earlier. I remember sitting. I was at the gym, and I was like, I had been messaging you, and I was like, same thing. Like, I've been looking for this for years. Like, and even when I do find somebody, it's like from the woman's perspective of male factor infertility, which is great to hear, and I'm so grateful for those voices. But like, I want one that mirrors my voice. And Victoria's like, yeah, great idea. You should do that. And
And he said, really? I'm like, yes, really, do it.
like, wait, no, not like that. Like somebody else that I can just watch,
Right.
But,
Yeah.
Look at you now, all grown up.
Thank you both for sharing your stories and your hearts with us. To our community watching, thank you for being here. And remember, no matter where you are on your path, there is no one right way to build your family. And if you'd like to connect further with Victoria or Alex, you can find Victoria at Expecting Anything, and you can find Alex at Pursuing Fatherhood. And we will share those for our listeners afterwards. And Victoria does have her book, which is a wonderful children's book.
Aw, love that.
Thank you.
Yes, we will link both of your accounts in the show notes. This will be available on Spotify after this, and then live on YouTube. If you are watching and if it's after June 22nd, then ignore this next message. But I'm going to do a shameless plug for Oasis FSN. That's our charity that runs this program, and our tea party, our fertility party gala, is coming up on June 22nd. So grab your tickets; they're still on sale. You can find them at oasisfsn.com, and we would love to see you there, celebrate with you. It's going to be a mixture of fertility community. There's going to be some doctors, there's going to be some clinics, there's going to be some practitioners, there's going to be a lot of supporters, and we're so excited for that day. So save the date, June 22nd. Can't wait to see everybody. And we will see you all next time on The Village. We'll be back next Wednesday night with Kaylee and Sarah talking about embryo donation. So pathways to parenthood this month on Fertility Village Live. So we'll see you all next week. Thank you again, Alex and Victoria, for joining us tonight. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you, and stay in touch on Instagram. I can't wait to, get to know you guys a bit better. We'll have you on again sometime for sure. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
thank you guys.
Bye.